I'm Tom Basili, and you're watching The Count on NewsMax Television, our special coverage bringing you the latest on the 2020 election. The Supreme Court's rejection of the Texas lawsuit challenging election results in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin isn't a fatal blow to the legal challenges being fought by President Trump and his allies, though it does understandably disappoint the president, who earlier today tweeted, "The Supreme Court had zero interest in the merits of the greatest voter fraud ever perpetrated on the United States of America. All they were interested in was, quote, standing, which makes it very difficult for the president to present a case on the merits." Joining us now to break it all down is Distinguished University Professor at Touro College Law School, Thane Rosenbaum. Professor Rosenbaum, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Heather.
So the campaign is now, after yesterday's ruling, they're not talking about Monday. They're not talking about the Electoral College vote. They've really sort of shifted their strategy to talking about January 6th as their end date to one degree or another. Talk to us about what could be done once these votes happen on Monday and once they get to Congress, and whether or not that's likely to succeed.
Well, the Electoral Count Act of the 19th century provides something that has never been done before and would be probably the most dramatic thing that ever happened in the House of Representatives, where the vice president, it's his job to read off what are called envelopes that have they're called certificates of ascertainment, and there's 50 of them for each state, and he simply opens them up and he reads the tally for each state and who received all of the electoral votes for which candidate. At that point, if a senator and a congressperson, has to be one from the Senate and one from the Congress, if they object to that list, both houses of Congress will separate and have a debate for 2 hours on whether to accept that list. And if they reject that list, they just toss those ballots away, those electoral votes away.
Yeah,
Never
and at
been
this
done.
point, well, we do know that Mo Brooks, though, who is the congressman out of Alabama, he is saying that he is going to do that. But I also believe that he is still looking for a senator to join him.
Yeah, Heather, you know, it's not the first time in history where there was an attempt to do this. You don't want to know the irony of this, Heather? In 2017, objecting to President Trump, this happened. There were 2 female congresswomen who raised this point to toss out the votes, I think, for Alabama. And it was Joe Biden, who was the vice president. There's an irony. And he said, "Do you have a senator on your side?" And they said no. And they said, "Forget it. It's over."
Yeah, I understand it. It actually was 2017, 2005, and 1969. Don't ask me details, but I do know that much.
You passed your history test, Heather.
I do a lot of reading in my off time.
So, Professor, you're saying that this can happen. So there is a process for objecting to the electors that are selected on Monday, on January 6th. The likelihood of that happening and happening in the quantity necessary to affect the outcome of the election would be unprecedented.
Well, in part because, remember, the Democrats still, through a narrower majority, still have the House, right? So you'd have to win in both the House and in the Senate. Look, the president, as you could see from that last tweet, he was counting on the Supreme Court. And that was, in my mind, a far more likelier place for him to succeed. And I'm sure that he is devastated. And I think in some ways it's sort of interesting because, you know, the Supreme Court is not known for wanting to take the game-winning shot. In fact, his tweet suggests that. What's wrong with you people? Why are you deciding on standing? Why didn't you go to the merits? Well, the Supreme Court is always very methodical, incremental, procedural. They always try to decide cases on very narrow grounds. Donald Trump is a showman. He probably thought with Amy Coney Barrett they would come to the rescue, but that was unlikely. That's what made Bush v. Gore so extraordinary, that a branch of the government that sees itself as largely apolitical and above the fray of politics got involved in deciding who became the next president. And guess what? In Bush v. Gore, there's a sentence that says, this case is only limited to this circumstance. It can never be used again.
So in short, In short, you were not surprised by the outcome, and you think that the court will be reticent to intervene in other cases.
You know, I want to say I'm on the minority on this side. I actually did think the court would be interested. I was surprised. Again, as I said, the court historically is incremental, procedural, decides on narrow procedural grounds. But I was pretty sure that Justice Alito, Thomas, and Kavanaugh, and possibly Gorsuch, were interested in the Article 2 issues that presented in this case, as well as the equal protection issues that also appeared in Bush v. Gore. If we had more time, I can explain to your audience what those two constitutional issues are. But none of them had anything to do with fraud. None of them. They would have dealt with pure constitutional questions.
Right.
And by the way, I'm shocked that 20 years after Bush v. Gore, that states didn't fix the problem. Because one of the problems, the equal protection issue, that was a large part of what was the decisive argument for Bush v. Gore to stop the counting.
Okay.
So why did it take 20 years and they still didn't fix it?
Yeah, and that's the thing, and we're out of time, Thane. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. But that is the issue moving forward. Are we going to 20 years from now be dealing with this and not solving these issues? And hopefully that's not the case. All right, thank you.
Bye
Well, coming up next, Dr. John Eastman is here to talk about how the state legislatures can get involved with the Electoral College. Much more. Stay with us.